In the summer of 1845, the Mexican newspaper El Registro de Durango called out the New Orleans Commercial Bulletin, a U.S. publication, in an editorial. The bulletin was proclaiming the Mexico's inability to fight off the savage tribes dotting their northern frontier in the war that threatens them. El Registro describes raids by these savage tribes as causing in them evils by harassing the Interior Department, and begs the question, did these native tribes play a role in the war that followed shortly after? Unfortunately, your AP US history textbook likely did not bother to tell you Native American tribes contributed to the US-Mexico War. Racist attitudes and a refusal to acknowledge them as organized political entities has led to their erasure from history in its earliest tellings, and this is still felt today. My goal is to guide you through that Native American contribution and convince you that they influenced the war's outcome by reshaping the northern Mexico frontier. The editorial from El Registro makes it clear that Native Americans were thought of as pawns of Mexico's philanthropic neighbors, perpetuating a historical narrative that ignores natives' role in the war even though they shaped the way these countries carried on the war and viewed each other. Native Americans remain important actors in the now present-day American Southwest from the arrival of the Spaniards through the U.S.-Mexico War. What would become the U.S.-Mexico border became important when Spaniards began to reorganize their frontier defenses in the late 1700s. After 1772, construction began on a cordon of presidios, a string of forts, along the frontier to act as an impenetrable barrier from the growing threat of Apache Indians. The new presidios were far from perfect, but served as places of refuge for the public and slightly improved the training and payment received by the troops. Several military campaigns followed, but each fell short of solving the Indian problem. So, New Spain traded out their strategy of continuous offensive wars with the tribes with one based on alliances, trade, and gift-giving. Peace was won with the tribes until Mexico won its independence in 1821. Hoping to maintain the peace established by the Spanish, Mexico attempted to adopt and reinvigorate the presidio system with its regulations of 1826. However, the war for independence left much of Mexico in ruin already, and it lacked the money and military to do so. The military became a lofty political institution that declined in effectiveness in the years following independence. As the presidios fell apart and the military ineffectiveness persisted, the northern frontier was left unprotected and at the mercy of native tribes. These developments saw an immediate rise in raids on the part of several northern tribes like the Comanches, Apaches, Utes, Kiowas, among others. The tribes took advantage of established complex raiding trails that spanned northern Mexico and penetrated well into the interior. They lost the reason to keep the peace. Rationing and gift-giving systems were discontinued, and the Southwest market for captives and livestock was growing. That market came from the Indian tribes forcibly moved to the west by the Jacksonian administration in the Trail of Tears, as well as American traders, the usual source of guns and ammunition. Native tribes clearly knew what they were doing and were executing their own geopolitical agendas. The destruction was also exponentiated by a vicious cycle of revenge. Many raids were the result of natives avenging their loved ones, participating in a system whereby they would beg a tribe leader to recruit other tribes and organizing revenge raids. The raids of this pre-war period were especially destructive, as data shows that tribes were often so caught up in destroying everything in sight that it distracted from their goal of taking livestock and captives. The successful raiding by native tribes largely influenced the U.S. and Mexico as they went into the war. The U.S. viewed the defeat of Mexicans by the tribes as moral justification for their invasion of the northern frontier. A people that posed no threat to Americans had decimated a nation they already viewed as inferior, and it was their job to come in and redeem the land. While they were slow to come to a consensus, the Mexican people viewed the increased raids as the U.S. attempt to further weaken Mexico and ease occupation of their land. They never saw the northern tribes as a serious threat. The damage already done, the stage was finally set and the U.S. and Mexico went to war. An unprepared Mexico put up a fight they could, but the decimation of their northern frontier by native tribes was exactly what the U.S. needed to come out victorious. The direct outcome of this war could have literally not occurred if natives had not been there to influence it. So, I hope that you were able to learn that natives were a lot more than just pawns in this international conflict.